guess what day it is? Today is the Lord's day, and we're going to rejoice and be glad in it. It is a beautiful day out, and God has allowed our golden moments to roll on. That's what the old school folks used to say. God allowed our golden moments to roll on. I don't know about you, but I'm glad about it. I want to thank you for joining us today. We have a great Sunday school lesson. Our series, as you know, is Jesus and the Disinherited. And our lesson today is entitled Riddle, 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 Ree. I see something you don't see. Now, after studying this lesson, and the aim of this lesson is that we want students to do a self-examination and see if they see as Jesus wants them to see, or do you see what you want to see? Now, go back into your mind, some of you. When we were young coming up, we loved to play outside. And especially if there had been a COVID-19 during my days of childhood, we've been out there every day playing. We didn't have televisions and definitely no computers and laptops and cell phones and all that. So we played outside. But when it was raining or it was dark, when we come inside, someone invariably would say, Riddle, 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 ree, I see something you don't see. Now, if you remember the game, the idea was something was in sight for you to see. It was visible, it was plain, it was right there. But it was to show you that 9 out of 10 times we didn't see what the other person saw. And this is what our lesson is about today. And I want you to think of it from the viewpoint of Jesus saying, riddle, 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 ree, I see something you don't see. So let's get into, consider. Now look, John chapter 8, verse 10 through 11. Now this woman was caught in the very act of adultery, and they bring her to Jesus. This is verse 10. When Jesus had raised himself up and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you? She said, No one, Lord. And Jesus said to her, Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. Now, the disciples saw an adulterous woman needing stoning. They saw what she did. I don't know how they did that. And they didn't bring the man, but that's another story. But they saw an adulterous woman needing stoning. Jesus saw a woman needing, notice he didn't see an adulterous woman. He saw a woman needing a second chance. Woo, that's good right there. So now let's go back up to the next incident. Matthew chapter 15, verse 23. Then his disciples urged him to send her away. Let me tell you what's going on here. This is where the Canaanite mother has come out because she heard that Jesus was in town. And her daughter, she says, is vexed with the demons, so she cries out to Jesus. But the disciples urged him to send her away. Tell her to go away, they said. She is bothering us with all her begging. Now, let's jump down to verse 28. Dear woman, Jesus said to her, your faith is great. Your request is granted. And her daughter was instantly healed. So, disciples saw a Canaanite woman as a bother because she was a Canaanite And she was a woman, and there they are out on the streets, and she's hollering after Jesus. So they saw her as a bother. Jesus saw not a Canaanite woman, but he saw a mother's faith. Woo! You see the difference. He wants us to see as he sees. Let's go back up. Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. I love this. As Jesus went from there, he had been teaching. He had been healing. So as he went from there, he saw a man. Stop right there. He saw a man. I love the way Matthew tells it. He didn't see what he was doing. He saw a man named Matthew. The man was named Matthew, sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he said, he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. So, the disciples saw Matthew as a tax collector. Jesus saw a man who could be his disciple. Whoa, riddle. I see something you don't see. Let's go John chapter 4, verse 7. A woman of Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. And at this, verse 27, at this point, his disciples came and they marveled that he talked with a woman. Yet no one said, what do you seek? Why are you talking with her? So let's look at this. The disciples saw a Samaritan woman as an undesirable because, number one, it was a woman and she was a Samaritan. Now, women didn't talk to men in public, and certainly Samaritans didn't talk to Jews. Now here Jesus is knocking down both traditions. So they saw the Samaritan woman as an undesirable. And my Lord, how many times do we see people in our own neighborhoods and communities that we label undesirable? What did Jesus see? Jesus saw a woman needing a Messiah. Let's go on. Matthew chapter 14, verse 15 through 16. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food. Jesus replied, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. Oh, I love this. Now, what did the disciples see? The disciples saw a crowd needing to leave. It's late. I'm sure they're hungry. Hey, we can't feed these folks. Tell them, send them away, Jesus. So they saw a crowd needing to leave. Jesus saw a people needing bread. People needing to be fed. Let's look at, I got one more. Luke chapter 23, verse 39 through 43. Jesus is now hanging on the cross. One of the criminals hanging beside him scoffed, so, you're the Messiah, are you? Prove it by saving yourself and us too. While you're at it. But the other criminal protests, don't you fear God even when you have been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes, but this man hasn't done anything wrong. Then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus replied, I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise. So the disciples, they saw a thief on the cross as a criminal, and he's getting what he deserves. What did Jesus see? He saw a repentant sinner. Now, see, in other words, Jesus saw their need. He saw useless lives that could be useful, especially for building the kingdom of God. He saw a life being wasted. How many times do we see it and we just keep on going? I'm telling you, folks, next week's lesson, but the 2 weeks from today, you want to tune in next week as well. But 2 weeks from today, that lesson even asks a question. Do you see me? See, we don't see people. They there. That's how come we say, riddle, 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 read. I see something you don't see. And Jesus saw a life being wasted. He saw sinners who needed a Savior. See, Jesus sees the person, not their position. You see, Matthew had the position as a tax collector, but Jesus didn't see that as a tax collector. He saw the person, because I told you, it said, and going from there, he saw a man. He saw the person. Jesus see the person and not their past. I told you the Samaritan woman, because in fact, when he talked with her, he said, go get your husband. She said, I don't have a husband. He said, you're right. See, he's not looking at, he said, you've had 5 husbands and the one you got now is not yours. So he wasn't condemning her past. He just letting her know, I know your past, but he still had time to talk to her because he saw the woman. In fact, when you start reading John chapter 4, it says that Jesus need to go through Samaria. Why? Because he needed to meet this woman at the well. Now, I'm sorry, you hear me clear my throat, but that's my allergies are bothering me so. Now, Jesus see the person and not the present. See, let's look at the Canaanite woman, or the thief hanging on the cross. He didn't see the position that they were in the present. He saw they needed help. So, Jesus looks beyond their faults and saw their needs. I don't know about you, but I'm so glad he looked beyond my fault and saw my need. You see, people see what we do and not who we are. And then if that's not bad enough, then they label us by what we do. They stereotype us. Just, you have a black person that perhaps won't work. Then you want to stereotype all of us as being lazy. Or we see a white man who thinks he's an extremist. And so then we label all white people as being extremists. So we stereotype people. We don't see people. We lump them together. In fact, people even see themselves the same way. You ask a person about themselves and they'll tell you about their position. Say, tell me something about yourself. And the first thing they will say, you see, I'm a director of Christian education. I'm a teacher. I'm a minister at St. Stephen. Who are you? That's why when people say to me, you want to be called Reverend, you want to be called Pastor, you want to be called what? I say, look, call me Geneva. Because that's what my mama named me. Look on my birth certificate. the first name, Geneva. So that's what we need to see. See people as they are. Now, let's get on down into this. Matthew chapter 25, starting at verse 34 through 40. Then the king, and when we start to say then, you need to ask yourself when, which means that you need to go back and read what transpired before this. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came to me. Then the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When this happened? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you? When did that happen? And the king will answer and say to them, you got to get this, you got to get this. Surely I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. Now, notice how Jesus identifies with the disinherited. He said, surely I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, these are my brethren, you did it to me. Now, let's look at this. You see, let me give you an illustration before I go a little bit further. There was a teacher, and he told the class, he said, I want you to think about who your enemy is. You, the person that you consider your worst enemy, and you love to get to them. I want you to bring a picture of them tomorrow, and what we're going to do, and we're going to allow you to throw darts at them. Says you just, and so everybody, they couldn't wait for that class. It was a psychology class. They couldn't wait for that class. Not psychology, theology. They couldn't wait. Oh, they was lining up. I mean, you know, usually you have some empty seats or people straddling in, but they was coming. And they had a picture, and the professors called on them, and they put the picture on the wall, and they throw back, and they throw darts, and it made them feel so good. But before the class ended, he took down all the pictures and gave it back to them. Underneath all the pictures was a picture of Jesus. And so many darts had hit him until the picture was almost unidentifiable. In other words, he was saying, you see, what you need to understand, every time you throw a dart or an angry word or a curse word or a bitter word at your enemy, you throwing it at Jesus. That's what he wants you to see. Riddle, read. I see something you don't see. Every time you pass by someone needing help, how do you know you just didn't pass Jesus by? So let's look here. First thing we want to look at also now is compassion. Second thing, I've already wanted you to consider how Jesus saw us we didn't see. Now let's look at his compassion. This parable that I just got through reading to you, and by the way, Matthew chapter 25 is considered the service chapter. So go back and read it in its entirety. This parable emphasizes the connection between seeing a need and acting on it. Woo! Drop the mic and let's go home. Seeing the need. You see a need. And then acting on it. You see, there are two types of sin. The sin of commission and the sin of omission. James said, if you know to do right and you don't do it, you've sinned. And when we can help somebody and we walk past them and don't help, you just sinned. You can help somebody. I think that's a song. If I can help somebody along the way, if I thought about it sooner, if I can cheer somebody with the word I say, see, then my living, God Almighty, will not be in vain. Let me go on. And the parable says, this parable that he gives, it's reminiscent of the Good Samaritan in Luke. You know, the Good Samaritan, Luke chapter 10, verse 30, 31. It said, Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, just happened, a priest came along. But when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. I said 31, I meant to 32, I'm sorry. A temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but he also passed by on the other side. Now, remember my point is seeing a need and acting on it. The parable said that they saw him. They saw him. And the first two, they saw him, and then they passed over on the other side. And I didn't read, along come the Good Samaritan. We know how that worked. But the Good Samaritan came along. Samaritan. You remember? The Samaritans, we told you this last week. The Samaritans was in the group of marginalized people, the least, the last, the lost. We ain't got no time for no Samaritans. That's how come the disciples were like, what are he doing talking to that woman? It's a woman and it's a Samaritan. What's up with Jesus? But now, here comes a Samaritan. And just let me jump ahead. Sometimes in November, we're going to do this parable again, the parable of the Good Samaritan. But now, let me stay focused. The Good Samaritan come along, and his response is threefold. The other one was twofold. They saw, they crossed over. But the response of the Samaritan, the third person, is threefold. He saw him, he was moved with compassion, and he took action to express his compassion. So the sequence of seeing, having compassion, and then acting on that is a common one in the Gospels. Oh, you ought to hear me, because I'm trying to teach you today. In Luke's Gospel, when Jesus saw the woman weeping at the death of her only son, woo, right there that ought to tell you, when Jesus saw the woman weeping at the death of her only son, he had compassion on her. Now, It didn't say he felt sorry for her. That's what we do. We feel sorry for people. Because we go merrily on our way. Oh, that's so sad. But Jesus had compassion. Why? Because, now notice I said a woman weeping at the death of her only son. So obviously, this was a widow woman, and the scripture tells us she's a widow woman, which means her husband was dead, her only son was dead. This woman is in a bad situation because women were marginalized. They had no place. They were property. So she's now going to be out there on the streets begging for something. And you can read it. Luke chapter 7, verse 11. This is it. Soon afterward, Jesus went with his disciples to the village of Nain, and a large crowd followed him. But here his crowd met up with a funeral procession was coming out as he approached the village gate. The young man who had died was a widow's only son, and a large crowd from the village was with her. When the Lord saw her, woo, thank you, his heart overflowed with compassion. I told you, and anytime you see in the scriptures that Jesus had compassion, he does something. He don't feel sorry for you and say, oh, that's too bad. No, oh my goodness. Wasn't that sad? Did you see that? Oh, that was sad. That almost made me want to cry. And then go on home. But he said, don't cry, he said. Then he walked over to the coffin and touched it. Oops. That's a no-no. Jews didn't touch nothing dead because it made them ceremonially unclean. And the bearer stopped. Young man, he said, I tell you, get up. Then the dead boy sat up. Said, y'all, what's going on? Because he said he began to talk. He said, hey, mama, what you crying about? And Jesus gave him back to his mother. Woo, thank you. I don't know about you all, but I'm so glad that Jesus has compassion. Now, when in Luke's gospel, when the father saw the prodigal son still far off, look at it, he was filled with compassion. And doing that, filled with compassion, he did something. What did he do? He ran and embraced him. If you don't believe me, I'm in the Bible. Luke chapter 10, verse 20. So he returned home to his father. That's the prodigal son. And while he was still a long way off, he was trying to get home. He was still a long way off. His father saw him coming. How could he see him? He was looking for him, watching for him, probably standing at that gate every day, looking for that trifling son. And when he saw him, he was filled with love and compassion. He ran. And this is one time that you see, because men, you know, they had long robes and things. So he had to hike that robe up. He ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. But he saw him. When he saw him, he had compassion, and he did something. That's in Luke's gospel. In John's gospel, he saw the anxious inquirers and bade them come and see and stay with him. That was Andrew and John. Andrew and John. They were John the Baptist's disciples, and when they saw Jesus, and they said, Master, where are you going? And he said, come and see, and bade them come stay with him. He saw the devout worshiper and commended him. He saw the impotent man and healed him. That's the story that we did last week about the man at the pool. He saw him and he healed him. He saw the hungry multitude and supplied their need. That's in John 6:5. Go back when he saw the anxious inquirers. That's John 1:38. And then he saw the devout worshipers. That was in John 1:47 through 50. He saw the impotent man and healed him. That's in chapter 5, verse 6. All of this is in John. And then when he saw the hungry multitude and supplied their need, that's in chapter 6, verse 5. He saw the weeping mourners and was troubled for them. This is in Lazarus, talking about Lazarus, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. When Jesus saw how they wept and cried, that's when Jesus cried himself, and he knew what he was going to do. He had compassion. He saw the distressed mother and cared for her at John 19, verse 26. That was his mama. He was dying, but he saw his mama there, had compassion, and said, "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother." In other words, he took care of Mary before he closed his eyes and died, gave up the ghost. He saw the blind man and revealed to him that he was the light of the world. The blind man couldn't see Jesus, but Jesus saw him. Jesus saw him. Matthew and Mark repeatedly tell us that when Jesus saw a crowd, he had compassion on them and healed them, fed them, taught them. He didn't have pity. Nowhere in the Bible do you see the word and Jesus had pity on them. It said he had compassion, pity. Now write this one down because this is a good one. Pity stands and stares. Compassion sees and serves. And I hate to say it, but the church is not showing compassion that he showed, that Jesus showed. Because, look, I was hungry. Jesus said, I was hungry and you fed me. But now, listen to the other side, the one who was hungry. I was hungry and you formed a humanities club and discussed my hunger. I was in prison and you crept off quietly to your church and prayed for my release. I was naked, and in your mind, you debated the morality of my appearance. I was sick, and you knelt and thanked God for your good health. I was homeless, and you preached to me of the spiritual shelter of the love of God. Well, that sounds even Christianese to me. I was lonely, and you left me alone to pray for me. I was killed by the police, and you found no reason to charge anyone for my death. I was unemployed, underemployed, and you said I was just lazy. I was in court, and I wanted justice in the courts, and you worked to change the courts to benefit yourself. I was barefoot. I didn't have shoes, and you told me to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I demand reparation, and you, Mitch McConnell, told me we gave you Obama. You seem so close to God, but I am still very hungry, lonely, cold, and discriminated against. And I won't take that back. Do you hear me now? Riddle, 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 read. I see something you don't see. If the church doesn't see as Jesus sees, what's our problem? What's our problem? And let me say this to the St. Stephen Sunday school classes that are watching. Does your class have a missions project? Can you do better? Can you do more? Well, why not do more? In this COVID-19 era, we need to do more. So we've talked about consider, compassion. Let's look at concern. The ultimate mark of an authentic Christian is not his creed, his faith, or his Bible knowledge. I hate to tell you, but Jesus cares very little about whether you could say Psalms number 23 off by heart. But his concern, our concern, let me go back because I stopped and I had to put a little comment in, so I don't want you to lose my thread. The ultimate mark of an authentic Christian is not his creed, his faith, or his Bible knowledge, but his concern, which he shows to those who are in need. You see, the practical demonstration of love is the final proof of who we are. Notice, Jesus, in the parable that I read, he said to those on the right, remember the parable I read to you? Jesus does not ask anyone to present his case or argue his cause. He does not ask a question. He does not request evidence. He simply extends to the one group the invitation to come, oh blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom. And then he explained the basis of his choice. You know why I did that? He said he was simply noticed that when they had an opportunity, to help someone, they did it. They just did it. Ain't that what Nike said? Just do it. They just did it. Nothing more is required. Just do it. So in Matthew 25, Jesus is telling us what Christians will look like. You remember when they show Daniel Cameron doing the Breonna Taylor, but the news show. He was giving the live show. He said, and he made the statement. He said, "I'm a black man." And I thought, dude, we can see you black. That's unnecessary. It's the first time and only time they ever said he was black. He didn't have to tell us he's black. You shouldn't have to tell a person, well, see, I'm a Christian. If you have to tell a person you are a Christian, then you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself. See, they will know we're a Christian when you feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, give a bed to stranger, clothe the naked, look after the sick, and visit those in prison. That's how the world will recognize us as followers. We will treat everybody the same regardless of position, popularity, or prestige. You see, God did not create his church so that the church could be a fashion show to display garments of righteousness. God did not die on the cross for the church so the church could be a club to entertain lost souls on their way to hell. The church is not a motel for sleepy Christians to come and rest. It's not a hunting club where one member comes gunning for another member. It's not an ice house where you come with cold hearts to give other members a cold shoulder. Then that leads me right into my next point. See, many of us are counterfeit Christians. There are those who claim to be Christian, but we don't do what Jesus said to do. He is saying, if you're not bearing my fruit, you're not wearing my name. If we know Christ, then we should show Christ. You see, do you realize that counterfeit They are made to look like an exact copy of something. I'll never forget, this friend told me she went to someplace, I think it was Walmart's, shopping, and she was just a shopping, and she got in the checkout counter, and she paid gave the cashier a $50 bill. And the woman looked at it, and she held it up to the light. See, the light will reveal who you are. Woo, God Almighty. And the clerk looked back at her and said, this is counterfeit. And my sisters and brothers, I'm afraid some of us, it had no value. That $50 bill she thought could purchase all that she had there, it had no value. And I'm afraid that's what's going to happen to some of us. We're going to get to heaven's gates, and He's going to hold us up in the light. Woo! God Almighty. And we're going to be shown as counterfeits. Let me move on, because my time is almost up. So let's look at commitment. Because I'm telling you, if we know Christ, then we should show Christ. Commitment. Christ is looking for committed servants. Humble servants who give humble service. Who give immediate service. You're not looking for a payback when you give humble service. I think Pastor preached on that on Sunday. Immediate service, like right now, not after a while. I get to it when I can. Unrealized service, because they said, well, when did we see you? When did we do this? Unrealized, in spite of service. Oh, God, I wish I had time I could go through this. The in spite of service, I have to quickly tell you. Go read John chapter 13. And verse 15 says, I have given you an example that you ought to do as I've done. What have you done, Jesus? He said, I washed their feet. So I'm telling you, notice, He washed feet. He didn't look up. But we need to look up and see whose feet He was washing. James and John, who had a hidden agenda, even brought their mommy, and one sat on the right and the other sat on the left. He washed Peter's feet. Peter, who's going to deny Him. Judas' feet. Judas, who's going to betray Him. Nathaniel's feet. And he thought he was better than everybody else. But He washed their feet. He served them. And now let me come on down. Whew. I need to, my time is running out, but I need to tell you this last thing. The last thing is changes. The change that came about because she saw Him. The woman caught in adultery, what changed? Her sins were forgiven. The Canaanite mother, her daughter was healed. The Samaritan woman, she was saved and evangelized the town. The crowd was fed by Jesus and had leftovers. They marveled at Him. The thief on the cross was saved and was with Jesus in paradise the same day. And Matthew went from unprofitable to profitable, from collecting taxes to collecting truths, writing the gospel according to Matthew, showing Jesus as king with the kingdom. Riddle, read. I see something that you don't see. What if Jesus said, okay, let's play a game. Riddle, read. I see something that you don't see. What do you see, Jesus? He says, I see boys who need mentors. I see girls who need a father figure. I see neighborhoods that need cleaning and claiming. I see houses that need rebuilding. I see hospitals that need business. I see jails that got more men in it than young men than colleges do. Riddle, read. I see something you don't see. What do you see, Jesus? He said, I see a thirst that needs quenching. I see a hunger that needs to be satisfied. I need to see a desire that needs to be controlled. I see the lonely dying in their loneliness. I see the alcoholic dying in his alcohol. The drug addict dying in their drugs. The sinner perishing in their sin. Riddle, read. I see something you don't see. Now, tell me, what do you see, Christian? See you next week.